Now with Thrasher Funds, can you speak a little bit about or explain to our viewers out there what exactly is the Gendex Fund?
The Gendex Fund is our way of continuing to acutely address some of the questions you just asked me. Okay, now I understand Charles Schwab made it more available for me to own a brokerage account, and I don't have to call a guy and pay him $100 just to make a trade, and the typical example of I was paying for this guy's Porsche, whether or not I made money or lost money, he made tons of money. A lot of what still exists in the industry are high degrees of barriers for people to get involved, whether on two fronts. Number one, it's knowledge. So to your question before of how to get people involved, we try to take things in everybody's lifestyle and make them relatable to them. Again, if you're going shopping here, if you care about the environment because you saw Al Gore's movie, Archer Daniels Midland is the largest ethanol producer. These are all the types of companies that we hold in our portfolio, from Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway to Steve Jobs' Apple to the Googles and the Nikes and the Louis Vuittons, everything in between, the whole gamut of the stock array. So we try to make it more accessible from a knowledge standpoint with our Gendex Fund. And then the second way is to make it accessible from a dollar amount. You can open accounts with as little as $100 to start and $50 per month. So again, as one of my friends said, you kind of you kind of took away all the excuses I ever had to not invest. And so, I'm sure most people I talk to spend $100 on a pair of jeans. And some of the numbers that you've discussed just now, you see how much we're spending as a demographic, as a minority demographic, etc. One book that's out, which is really a good read as well, it's called The $1 Trillion Allowance. And it really just talks about how much money we spend. But if we could take some of that money and turn it into working for us and producing wealth, those are the things that really get us excited at Thrasher.
Okay, 3 words have been monumental to the success of Thrasher Funds. I'll make sure I get it correct. The demographic conversion thesis.
Absolutely.
Can you break it down for us?
The demographic convergence thesis is our way of elaborating on what we think is a new market dynamic. You can read Tom Friedman's book, The World is Flat. He talks a lot about the talent landscape and how that's more global, from Shakira to Beyonce. You see this song that Lupe made with the guy from Europe. It's just really a flatter landscape. You can also talk about the convergence of ages, where 45-year-old women and 25-year-old women are now shoulder to shoulder in the department store trying on the same jeans. We saw this through a cultural and demographic education through shows like Desperate Housewives, Sex and the City, obviously your MTVs. There's this acute focus on youth and remaining relevant and taking care of yourself. And then also in the way that we use and lead our life in technology and energy. There was a time where the older demographics would kind of stop shopping. You see your grandmother drive the same car she had, when she was still telling your parents what to do. That's not the case anymore. She's going out and trying to make sure that her whip is together just like you are. So the demographic convergence thesis is our way of saying, okay, that was an interesting article in the New York Times. That was an interesting article in The Economist. That was an interesting article in the New Yorker magazine about Generation X and Generation Y and the boomer generation staying younger. And what we're doing is taking that information and saying, hey, we're in a new market dynamic where the gross domestic product is 70% consumer based. It's no longer just railroads and commodities and the steel industry, which was, the internet at a different time and era. But it's now the 70% consumer based economy where people in our demographic have acute analysis to really knowing where the next things are going to be. And so we try to basically bake that into our portfolio management and our investment analysis and how we invest. And I think and really believe that it's the way to the future of analyzing businesses and companies as well.
Currently, what are your assets under management for Thrasher Funds?
For Thrasher Funds, the entire global company, we've got about 10 million under management. We have several different businesses that we control. One's the mutual fund, one's the hedge fund, and then we also have our multimedia business that shows our cake batter episodes on YouTube and on thrasherfunds.com. We have our tutorial series, Thrasher University, where we go speak to schools and teach kids simple things such as what is a stock and what is a mutual fund. So we're just all over the place trying to meet this demographic where they traffic and communicate to them in a way that they are accustomed to being communicated to. You know, when you look at 17 magazine or Teen Vogue, or a lot of these other magazines, you could look at Vibe or Double XL. You don't see financial advertisements in those magazines to start, and you don't see financial advertisements that would speak to that demographic as well. So what we're trying to do, and I still feel like we're in the early stage, even though our company is 3 years old now, of really being an expert at communicating to this demographic and meeting them at the places where they are, whether it's through our company's MySpace page, our company's YouTube channel, hosting an event at a fashion boutique downtown here in New York, or taking it elsewhere. We really want to be the experts in generating relationships and education with this demographic in finance, which no other financial institution is doing at this time.
Many economists point to the fact that we're in a recession right now.
Right.
So a lot of the younger generation don't necessarily know what that means. So number one, can you just break down what exactly is a recession?
Right.
And number two, do you see us and do you see a way out of this recession?
Absolutely. Well, I think, as you said, the biggest debate right now is whether or not we're in a recession, the definition of a recession. I was talking recently this week about the term recessionistas, which are basically kind of, fashionistas are the people that are looking forward to the next year's fashions. Recessionistas are the kind of analysts that are looking forward to a recession happening or what's going on. Typically, a recession is defined as two back-to-back quarters of negative GDP growth. And we still have not seen that. Now, the thing where I think it becomes interesting, where we have to keep an open mind as far as analyzing what a recession actually is that the economy has really evolved from when these definitions were made. And this is one of the biggest things that we try to focus on at Thrasher, as far as really looking at the new market with a new perspective and potentially new definitions. So maybe that new definition means that we've never encountered the Fed having to bail out an investment bank. We've never had to encounter sovereign wealth funds running to the rescue of a lot of our major corporations here in the United States. So if you said, taking those things into account, JP, have we, begun to start a recession? I would say probably so. Now, on some of the other numbers as far as where the market has gone, from the peaks of last summer this time to now, I think we're only down about 10%. Recessionary numbers look more like the markets are down 20%. So some of my other portfolio manager friends and analysts think that we have further to go. But these are just all market cycles. The things that I'm looking at as far as an analysis will be the presidential candidate. I think in November and December, when we see more clarity in what's going to happen with policy, the markets will feel more comfortable about investing in the future cash flows of a lot of businesses. When we have more of an outcome on what's going to happen in Iraq, in the Middle East, and the oil supply and demand dynamics, then we're going to see more probably of a stabilization of oil, or we could see a spike. But nonetheless, we will see a more lucid picture about what's going to happen on the commodity front. So I think a lot of it is going to deal with time, and at the end of this year, we're going to see a situation where we have more information.